Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel, The Story Library. I hope you all stay well and healthy. Starting a new story today. Story named The Stranger Who Changed the Village. Far away from the noisy cities, surrounded by green fields and small hills, there was a village called Green Valley. It was a beautiful place, but the people living there were not happy. The roads were broken, the school was old, and many families were poor. Some people had stopped helping one another because they were too busy worrying about their own problems. The village chief, Mr. Henry, often said, "This village has lost its spirit. People no longer smile like they used to." One cold evening, dark clouds covered the sky. The villagers hurried into their homes before the rain began. Suddenly, a man appeared on the dusty road leading into the village. He looked tired and had a long brown coat. An old backpack hung over his shoulder. His shoes were covered with dust, as if he had walked for many days. A little girl named Lily saw him first. "Mother, look! Someone is coming." The villagers stared at the stranger. Nobody recognized him. The man stopped in the middle of the village and looked around quietly. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Is there a place where I can stay tonight?" No one answered immediately. Finally, an old farmer named Thomas stepped forward. "You can sleep in my barn. It isn't comfortable, but it's warm." The stranger smiled. "Thank you. Your kindness means a lot." That night, heavy rain fell across the village. Thunder shook the sky. The stranger slept in the barn while Thomas and his family wondered who he really was. The next morning, Thomas went outside and could not believe his eyes. The old fence around his farm, which had been broken for months, was completely repaired. Even the damaged chicken coop had been fixed. The stranger was carrying a bucket of water. "You did this?" Thomas asked in surprise. "Yes," the man replied with a smile. "But why?" "You gave me a place to sleep. I wanted to thank you." Thomas was speechless. Soon the entire village heard the news. The stranger repaired Thomas's farm. Some people became curious. Others became suspicious. A rich merchant named Victor frowned. "No one helps people for free," he said. "This man must want something." But the stranger never asked for money. Later that day, he saw old Mrs. Martha carrying a heavy basket. Without saying a word, he helped her carry it home. The next day, he repaired the broken roof of a widow's house. The day after that, he helped several farmers harvest their crops. Everywhere he went, he left kindness behind. The villagers slowly began to trust him. One afternoon, little Lily found him sitting beside the river. "What is your name?" she asked. The stranger smiled. "My name is Daniel. Do you have a family?" Daniel looked at the flowing water. "Yes," he said softly, "but I have been traveling alone for a very long time." "Why do you travel?" He smiled again. "Because there are many people who need help." Lily thought about his answer and said, "Then you must be a hero." Daniel laughed. "No, little one. I am just a traveler." Days passed, and Daniel became part of village life. He repaired the school roof. He painted the classroom walls. He built shelves for books. The children loved him because he told them stories every evening. One night, he told them, "Kindness is like a candle. One candle can light thousands of others without losing its own light." The children never forgot those words. However, Victor continued watching Daniel carefully. One evening, he secretly followed him into the forest. But Daniel simply collected wood for an old family whose house had been damaged. Victor became even more confused. Why would anyone work so hard without expecting a reward? Then something terrible happened. Dark clouds gathered above Green Valley. A powerful storm was coming. Nobody knew that this storm would change the village forever and reveal the true greatness of the mysterious stranger named Daniel. The next morning, the sky above Green Valley looked strange. Dark clouds covered the sun, and a cold wind blew through the village. Farmer Thomas looked up and said, "A big storm is coming." The villagers became worried. The last time a storm had hit the village, several houses were destroyed and many crops were lost. Daniel noticed the fear on everyone's faces. "How often do storms come here?" he asked. Village Chief Henry sighed. "Every few years. And every time they come, our village suffers." Daniel looked around carefully. Some houses had weak roofs, and the bridge near the river was already damaged. "We don't have much time," he said. "We must prepare." Some villagers listened to him immediately, but others were uncertain. Victor crossed his arms and said, "It's only a storm. Why should we panic?" Daniel replied calmly, "Because a small problem becomes a disaster when people ignore it." The chief nodded. "Everyone, listen to Daniel. We will prepare today. Soon the entire village became busy. The men gathered wood and repaired doors and windows. The women stored food and fresh water. The children carried small tools and helped clean the streets. Daniel worked harder than anyone. He climbed onto roofs and repaired broken tiles. He strengthened the walls of old houses. He even repaired the village bridge because he feared the river would flood. Little Lily followed him everywhere. "Don't you ever get tired?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "Sometimes I do, but helping others gives me strength." As evening approached, the wind became stronger. The trees bent from side to side. Thunder roared across the sky. The villagers hurried into their homes. Suddenly, heavy rain began to fall. The storm had arrived. The rain became so strong that people could barely see outside their windows. The river quickly started to rise. Then there was a loud crash. A huge tree had fallen onto Mrs. Martha's house. "Help!" she cried. Without hesitation, Daniel ran through the rain. Thomas and several villagers followed him. Together they lifted the broken branches and helped Mrs. Martha escape safely. "You saved my life," she said, shaking with fear. But there was no time to rest. Another villager came running. "The river is overflowing. The bridge may collapse." Daniel hurried toward the river. The water was rushing violently. Some children were trapped on the other side. Their parents cried desperately. "We have to save them." Daniel tied a long rope around his waist. "No," shouted Chief Henry. "The current is too strong." But Daniel stepped forward. "If we wait, the children may die." Thomas held the other end of the rope. "We'll pull you back." Daniel slowly crossed the shaking bridge. The rain hit his face, and the river roared beneath him. Suddenly, part of the bridge broke. Everyone screamed, but Daniel managed to keep his balance. He reached the children and held their hands. "Don't be afraid," he said. "We'll go home together." One by one, he brought them across the bridge. The villagers cheered with relief. Just as the last child reached safety, the bridge collapsed completely into the river. Everyone stared at Daniel in amazement. He had risked his own life to save the children. Victor watched silently. For the first time, he felt ashamed. The storm continued throughout the night. Many families had to leave their homes because of the flooding. Daniel opened Thomas's barn and turned it into a shelter. He made fires to keep everyone warm. He gave his own blanket to an old man. He shared food with hungry children. Even though he was exhausted, he never stopped helping. Late at night, Lily noticed him sitting alone. "You should sleep," she said. Daniel smiled gently. "There are still people who need help. Why do you care so much about everyone?" For a long moment, Daniel remained silent. Then he said softly, "Many years ago, when I needed help, kind people saved me. Since then, I promised myself that I would help others whenever I could." Lily smiled. "I think you're the kindest person in the world." Daniel laughed quietly. "No, Lily. The world is full of kind people. Sometimes they only need someone to remind them." At sunrise, the storm finally ended. The villagers stepped outside and looked around. Many trees had fallen. Several houses were damaged. Fields were flooded. But something amazing had happened. Because they had prepared and worked together, no one had died. Chief Henry gathered everyone in the village square. If Daniel had not warned us, this disaster would have been much worse. The villagers clapped loudly. Mrs. Martha hugged him. The children surrounded him happily. Even Victor slowly walked toward him. "You saved the village," he said quietly. Daniel shook his head. "No, the village saved itself." Everyone worked together. Victor looked down at the ground. For the first time in many years, he realized something important. Money could buy many things, but it could never replace kindness. As everyone celebrated surviving the storm, another problem was already waiting for Green Valley. The flood had destroyed most of the crops, and soon the village would face a terrible food shortage. Daniel looked at the damaged fields and knew that an even greater challenge was coming. A few days after the great storm, the people of Green Valley began to understand how much damage had been done. The fields were covered with mud. Many vegetable gardens had been destroyed, and the river had washed away bags of rice and wheat. The fruit trees had lost their branches, and several farmers had lost almost everything they owned. One morning, Farmer Thomas stood in his field and looked at the ruined crops. "What are we going to do?" he asked sadly. "There won't be enough food for winter." Other farmers gathered around him. They all looked worried. Village Chief Henry called a meeting in the town square. "We have survived the storm," he said, "but now we face another problem. If we do not find food soon, many families will go hungry." The villagers began talking anxiously. We don't have enough money to buy food from the city. The roads are damaged. What will happen to our children? Daniel listened quietly. Then he stepped forward. There is still hope, he said. Everyone looked at him. Hope? Victor asked. How can there be hope when our fields are destroyed? Daniel smiled gently. Because we still have our hands, our strength, and each other. The villagers became silent. Daniel continued. Instead of worrying, we must work together. What do you suggest? Asked Chief Henry. Daniel pointed toward the hills. I saw many wild fruit trees in the forest. We can collect fruit and store it. We can repair the fields and plant fast-growing vegetables. The farmers looked at one another. It may work, Thomas said. Daniel nodded. And nobody in this village should eat alone. We will share everything. The villagers agreed. That very day, they started working. Some people repaired the roads. Others cleaned the fields. A group of women gathered vegetables that had survived the storm. The children collected firewood. Daniel worked harder than anyone. He built a large storage room beside the barn where food could be kept safely. At sunset, he gathered everyone together. From today, he said, we will have one community kitchen. Every family will bring whatever food they can. The people agreed. Soon, large pots of soup were cooking every evening. No matter how little food they had, everyone shared. For the first time in years, rich and poor families sat together and ate at the same table. Even Victor joined them. As he looked at the smiling faces around him, he felt something strange in his heart. He had always eaten alone in his large house. Yet this simple meal tasted better than any expensive dinner he had ever had. The next morning, Daniel and the farmers went to the forest. They collected apples, berries, and nuts. Suddenly, little Lily shouted. Look, behind a group of trees, they found an abandoned garden. There were potatoes, carrots, and pumpkins growing everywhere. It must have belonged to someone long ago, Thomas said. Daniel smiled. This garden may save our village. For the next several days, everyone worked in the old garden. They harvested vegetables and planted new seeds. Slowly, the food supplies began to grow. But one night, something unexpected happened. Victor came to Daniel's barn carrying several bags of grain. Daniel looked surprised. What is this? Victor lowered his head. I have been storing these bags for years. I kept them only for myself. Daniel nodded. Yes, at sunrise, I will travel to Riverwood. Lily's face became pale. You're leaving? Daniel smiled gently. Only for a little while. But deep inside, he knew that this journey would become one of the greatest challenges of his life. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Daniel packed his old backpack and prepared for his journey to Riverwood. The entire village gathered to say goodbye. Little Lily looked sad. Do you really have to go? She asked. Daniel knelt beside her and smiled. Yes, Lily. When people need help, we should do our best to help them. But what if something happens to you? Daniel gently placed his hand on her head. Do not worry. I will come back. Farmer Thomas handed him a bag of food. You helped us when we needed you, he said. Now let us help you. Chief Henry gave him a warm blanket. The nights are cold in the mountains, he said. Even Victor stepped forward. He gave Daniel a small bag of coins. You may need these. Daniel smiled. Thank you, my friends. As the sun rose over the hills, Daniel and the messenger began their journey. They walked through forests, crossed small rivers, and climbed rocky paths. By evening, they reached a narrow bridge hanging over a deep valley. Suddenly, they heard a cry for help. A cart had overturned near the bridge. An old man was trapped beneath it. Without hesitation, Daniel ran toward him. Together, they lifted the cart and freed the man. The old man looked at Daniel with tears in his eyes. You saved my life. Daniel smiled. Please be careful. The old man reached into his pocket and took out a small silver compass. Take this, he said. It has guided me for many years. Daniel shook his head. I don't need a reward. The old man insisted. Then accept it as a gift. Daniel finally accepted the compass and thanked him. The journey continued. Late that night, they reached a small inn beside the road. As they were eating dinner, they heard loud voices outside. A young boy had gone missing in the forest. The boy's mother was crying. My son never came home. Daniel immediately stood up. I'll help find him. The innkeeper looked surprised. You've already traveled all day. You must be exhausted. Daniel smiled. There is no time to rest when a child is in danger. Several villagers joined him. They carried lanterns and searched the dark forest. Hours passed. The wind grew colder. Then Daniel heard a faint voice. Help! He followed the sound and found the boy sitting beside a fallen tree. The child's foot was injured. "Don't be afraid," Daniel said gently. He carried the boy back to the village. The boy's mother hugged her son and began to cry. "Thank you. Thank you." The villagers thanked Daniel again. The innkeeper shook his head in amazement. "I have never met anyone like you." The next morning, Daniel and the messenger continued toward Riverwood. At noon, they finally reached the village. The sight before them was heartbreaking. Many people were lying in their homes, too weak to stand. Children were crying. The village doctor looked tired and worried. "We don't have enough medicine," he said. "The sickness is spreading quickly." Daniel immediately began helping. He cleaned the doctor's clinic. He carried water to the sick families. He organized the villagers into groups. Some people gathered herbs from the forest. Others prepared food for the patients. For several days, Daniel hardly slept. He visited every home. He comforted frightened children and encouraged the villagers not to lose hope. One evening, the doctor spoke to him. "You are not from this village, yet you work harder than anyone." "Why?" Daniel looked at the stars. "Because suffering belongs to all of us. When one person is hurting, we should not turn away." The doctor smiled. "You have a good heart." After a week, the sickness slowly began to disappear. The patients recovered. The children started playing again. Riverwood was saved. The villagers gathered in the square. Their leader stepped forward. "You came here as a stranger, but you leave as our hero." Everyone clapped and cheered. They offered Daniel gold and gifts. But Daniel politely refused. "I don't need rewards. Seeing your smiles is enough." The people were deeply moved. As Daniel prepared to return to Green Valley, an old woman approached him. She handed him a small wooden box. "Please take this," she said. "What is it?" Daniel asked. "It belonged to my husband. He always believed that kindness returns to those who give it." Daniel opened the box. Inside was an old photograph of a young man helping people in another village. The man looked very familiar. For a long moment, Daniel stared at the picture. Then he smiled softly and closed the box. The next morning, he began his journey home. But he did not know that trouble had already arrived in Green Valley. While he was away, a group of dishonest traders had come to the village. They wanted to buy the farmers' land for a very small price and force the villagers to leave their homes. And with Daniel gone, the people of Green Valley faced a danger greater than ever before. As Daniel was returning from Riverwood, trouble was growing in Green Valley. A group of rich traders had arrived in the village. Their leader was a clever and greedy man named Mr. Carter. He looked at the green fields and fertile land and smiled. "This village is perfect," he said to his men. "We will buy all this land and become very rich." "But what if the villagers refuse?" one of the traders asked. Mr. Carter laughed. "Poor people always accept money when they are desperate." The traders went from house to house. They offered small amounts of money for the villagers' farms. Some families were tempted. The recent storm had destroyed their crops, and they still had very little money. "We may never recover," one farmer said sadly. "Perhaps we should sell." Soon, fear spread through the village. Chief Henry tried to calm everyone. "We must think carefully," he said. But the traders continued to pressure the villagers. They promised big houses and easy lives in the city. Victor became suspicious. Something about the traders did not feel right. One evening, he secretly followed them. As he passed by their camp, he heard Mr. Carter talking. "Once we own this land, we'll cut down the forest and build factories. The villagers will have nowhere to return." Victor was shocked. The traders were lying. They didn't want to help the villagers. They wanted to take everything from them. The next morning, Victor ran to the village square. "Do not sell your land," he shouted. Everyone looked at him in surprise. "The traders are deceiving us." Mr. Carter quickly stepped forward. "He's lying," he said angrily. Victor stood his ground. "I heard your plans with my own ears." The villagers became confused. At that very moment, a familiar voice came from the road. "What is happening here?" Everyone turned around. It was Daniel. Little Lily ran toward him. "Daniel, you're back." The villagers cheered with joy. Daniel listened carefully as Chief Henry explained everything. Then he walked toward Mr. Carter. "Is it true?" he asked calmly. Mr. Carter smiled. "We are only trying to help these poor people." Daniel looked into his eyes. "Then why did you lie about your plans?" Mr. Carter's smile disappeared. The villagers began whispering among themselves. The trader grew nervous. Daniel continued, "A person's home is more valuable than gold. You cannot trick people into giving it away." Mr. Carter became angry. You have no right to interfere. Daniel remained calm. I have every right to protect innocent people. The villagers stood behind him. For the first time, they were no longer afraid. Farmer Thomas stepped forward. We will never sell our land. Another farmer shouted, This is our home. Soon, everyone was speaking at once. We are staying. You cannot fool us. Mr. Carter realized that his plan had failed. He looked around angrily. This village will regret this. But nobody listened to him. The traders packed their belongings and left Green Valley. As they disappeared down the road, the villagers burst into cheers. They had protected their homes. That evening, a great celebration was held in the village square. There was music, dancing, and delicious food. Chief Henry stood and raised his glass. Today we learned an important lesson. When we stand together, no one can defeat us. Everyone clapped. Then Victor stepped forward. A few months earlier, he had been the greediest man in the village. Now tears filled his eyes. I owe everyone an apology, he said. I once cared only about money. But Daniel taught me that kindness and friendship are worth far more. The villagers smiled warmly. Daniel put a hand on Victor's shoulder. You changed because you chose to become a better person. That night, as the stars filled the sky, Lily sat beside Daniel. Will you stay in Green Valley forever? She asked. Daniel looked toward the mountains. For a long moment, he said nothing. Finally, he smiled. Every traveler must continue his journey someday. Lily's smile disappeared. But this is your home. Daniel looked at the happy villagers dancing in the square. Perhaps, he said softly, but there are many places in the world where people still need help. Lily lowered her head sadly. Daniel gently handed her the small silver compass that the old man had given him. Keep this, he said. Why? So that whenever you feel lost, it will remind you to follow kindness. Lily held the compass carefully. She suddenly had a strange feeling that something important was about to happen. The next morning, the people of Green Valley woke up and discovered that Daniel's barn was empty. His old backpack was gone. On the wooden table lay only a letter. And with trembling hands, Chief Henry picked it up and began to read. The villagers gathered around Chief Henry as he slowly unfolded the letter. The square became completely silent. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Chief Henry took a deep breath and began to read. Dear friends, when I first arrived in Green Valley, I was a stranger. I had no home and no family here. But you welcomed me with kindness and gave me a place to stay. I repaired your fences and your houses, but in truth, you repaired something inside me. I came to your village thinking I would help you. Instead, you reminded me that there are still good people in this world. Please remember something important. Kindness is the greatest treasure a person can have. Help one another. Protect each other. And never forget that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life forever. I must continue my journey because there are still many people who need help. Do not be sad for me. Whenever you help someone, I will be there in spirit. Your friend, Daniel. As Chief Henry finished reading, tears filled his eyes. Many of the villagers began to cry. Little Lily held the silver compass tightly. He really left? She whispered. Farmer Thomas looked toward the empty barn. It feels as if we have lost a member of our family. Victor lowered his head. If Daniel had never come here, I would still be a selfish and greedy man. For a long time, nobody spoke. Finally, Chief Henry smiled gently. Daniel may have left our village, but his lessons will remain with us forever. The villagers agreed. Days passed. Life slowly returned to normal. But Green Valley was no longer the same village. People smiled more often. Neighbors helped one another. No one went hungry because everyone shared what they had. The school became larger, and new books filled its shelves. The roads were repaired. New trees were planted along the river. Even Victor changed completely. He used his money to build a small clinic for sick people. He also built a new bridge where the old one had collapsed during the storm. The villagers could hardly believe how much he had changed. One evening, Lily walked to the hill outside the village. She looked at the sunset and held the compass. I miss you, Daniel, she said softly. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. It was Chief Henry. He would be proud of you, the chief said. Lily looked up. Do you think we'll ever see him again? Chief Henry smiled. Perhaps. But even if we don't, his kindness lives in all of us now. Years passed. Little Lily grew into a kind and intelligent young woman. Inspired by Daniel, she became the village teacher. Every day, she taught the children an important lesson. Being rich does not make you great, she would say. Helping others makes you great. The children loved listening to stories about the mysterious traveler. One day, the villagers decided to build a statue in the center of Green Valley. It showed a man wearing a long brown coat and carrying an old backpack. At the bottom of the statue were written these words: "To Daniel, the stranger who taught us that kindness can change the world." People from nearby villages began visiting Green Valley. They heard stories about the mysterious man who had transformed an entire village through kindness. Some believed he was an ordinary traveler. Others thought he was an angel. Nobody knew the truth. Many years later, on a rainy evening, an old traveler entered a small village far away from Green Valley. The village looked poor and unhappy. Children were sitting beside broken houses. An old woman struggled to carry a heavy basket. The traveler quietly picked up the basket and carried it for her. The old woman smiled. "You are very kind, sir. What is your name?" The traveler looked at the cloudy sky and smiled softly. "My name doesn't matter." Then he continued walking. As he disappeared down the road, the old woman noticed something familiar. The traveler wore a long brown coat and carried an old backpack. In his hand was a small silver compass. And somewhere in the distance, another village was about to learn the same lesson that Green Valley had learned long ago. One kind person can change the lives of many people, and kindness never truly ends. It simply travels from one heart to another. The end.